Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Samira Tilley, Industry Marketing Manager at Assemble Systems, an Autodesk company. In today's webinar, we will look at how Assemble can be used for advanced QTO and beyond Precon by specialty subcontractors and or GCs that self-perform. Now let's get started. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Brent Ramos, Product Specialist Sales Manager at Autodesk. Go ahead, Brent.
Thank you, Samira, and I appreciate everybody joining us here this afternoon. This is an exciting webinar for me, as my background is I was a specialty subcontractor, primarily in stucco, but also drywall, where I spent about 10 years starting out in the field, eventually moving into the office where I was doing a lot of project management and estimating. For the past 7 years, I've had the privilege of working with contractors, subcontractors, and the design community to understand and adopt technology that helps win work and drive efficiencies and improving profit margins. Rachel?
Thanks, Brent. So my name is Rachel Trochi. I am an application engineer at Autodesk, and my background is actually in civil and structural engineering. For the past about year and a half, I've been working with the Assemble team over here at Autodesk, really providing proof of concept for customers, and then, going all the way through and leading implementation throughout the product implementation cycle.
Thanks, Rachel. So what we want to share today is really how Assemble Systems sees and approaches quantities on a project. So quantity data we know is critical to workflows throughout a project lifecycle. The way we condition or prepare those quantities, whether it's preparing an estimate or planning how we execute a job, is really key to our project success. At Assemble, the way that we organize information, virtual or digital project data, and make it accessible and useful to our project teams is really critical how we run our system. And this here is really Assemble's story in a nutshell. Assemble really takes those design models that are out in the industry, and design models we know are not created or intended for construction outputs. However, with the greater access to models and the proliferation of BIM in the industry, our customers were finding themselves under a tremendous amount of pressure to not only provide faster, more accurate project budgets, but to have better overall project understanding, to provide more dynamic options to their customers, and to give real-time updates and budget impacts anytime that design changes. So the challenge that our customers are facing is how can you take that design model information and translate that or condition the information to speak your team's language? So conditioning, that little cog in the middle, that's really how we see customers manipulating information so that they can get some of those critical outputs. So Assemble does, through conditioning, empower your team to not only rapidly quantify a project, but to identify constructability issues through our simple visual interface, to instantly quantify and visualize all the changes in new design iterations, and then to track the development of budgets and scopes as the design progresses. More importantly, we can visualize and quantify and then communicate any options or value in engineering that's done in the project. And then most importantly, really, is that higher level of confidence and certainty that you get by being able to not only visualize the information that you're putting together, but to share it with the rest of your team. So I want to point out some key features inside of Assemble that really make us special. I shared a minute ago that it's that organized project data and its accessibility and its usefulness that's critical for your team. And one of Assemble's key features is our accessibility. Our licensing always provides for unlimited users inside and outside your organization so that you can get the right people involved in this data. And because we're web-based, we eliminate any hardware restrictions or any software management for your IT team. But really, Assemble's true superpower is our ease of use. This is a solution that someone without any BIM experience, like myself, I've never opened Revit and I really don't know or care to know how to. But anybody without that BIM experience can get in, leverage the data, and learn to use this platform within a couple hours of training. So let's take a look really quickly at how Assemble is being used in the industry today by general contractors and the specialty subs or self-performs. Before I dive into the detailed takeoff requirements of the specialty trades or self-perform contractors, we'll look at how Assemble is used by general contractors. So Assemble improves collaboration by connecting quantities to construction data, like bid packages and work breakdown structure. And it leverages the connected 2D and 3D model for reference. It's fantastic for extracting and verifying those high-level quantities and monitoring the design changes as the design updates. And some GCs are even tracking the install status of those model objects to run real-time project progress reports. Now, the challenge that would have been my challenge and many of you on the call is that specialty subs and self-performed contractors need a much more granular level of information, and we need to break that scope down and run some very complex and sometimes a number of very complex calculations against the dimensional values of the geometry. That's not easily served up directly from the model. So let's take a look at some of the trades that do leverage Assemble today. And I'll start with steel. Getting that tonnage out of the model, that high-level tonnage, is fantastic. But we know for those who need more, Assemble can actually get in there and break down the steel by type and size, provide counts, locations, and then a visual perspective for where each member is going to be installed. If I take that concept a step further into concrete, most of our customers are pulling volumes broken down by category, so floors, columns, beams, etc. But what Rachel will show you in just a minute is our ability to get beyond the quantities that the model provides, and that's key. We can actually create the needed advanced quantities like contact areas for formwork, waste factors, and more. Also, we won't show this today, but I mentioned some of our GCs that are tracking progress within Assemble, and a few of them have actually moved a step beyond that and are appending condition scan data, laser scan data from the field, things like floor flatness scans, steel column scans for deviation, and much more. And they're connecting those scans into Assemble and the Assemble model and sharing that through our web browser out to the rest of their team. Now, real quick, just getting out of the structural trades, Assemble's ability to group, quantify, visualize, and condition model information and take that beyond the limits of what the model provides becomes even more important. We've worked with a lot of specialty subs on the exterior, like precast, glazing, curtain walls, to get some of those advanced quantities, I'll call them. Just for instance, gross square footage. Instead of taking the net square footage that model spits out to you, we want to take that gross square footage because that's going to make a huge difference in the estimate that you're delivering. Or among interior subs, we've helped a lot of interior subs actually visualize wall schedules, explore VE options, or break down quantities by phase and zone, whether that be for progress tracking and field management or just for breaking down the estimate based on different production rates. And finally, for those complicated MEP contractors, they're really able to leverage Assemble, particularly to track and report on installation progress. And Rachel will show this in a bit too. So if you haven't seen the webinar that McKinstry did for us last year, I'd highly encourage anyone to go back and check that out from the archives. And if you're going to AU, there's going to be a session on a similar topic done by CJ Best from McKinstry. So really looking forward to that. Let's get away from just talking about it. And Rachel, I'll hand it over to you to actually show how we can get down and extract and create some of these advanced takeoff capabilities.
Awesome. Thank you, Brent. Basically, this is Assemble's core platform right here. And what we want to talk about today is how we can really condition through to this concrete information and dive through and get a quick and easy concrete takeoff here. So just by starting off here, what I'm actually going to start to do is start by reorganizing my inventory right here. So up here with our group by, I'm actually going to drive through and start reorganizing this information in here by our structural material. So if I scroll all the way down here, we can quickly go ahead and grab that structural material grouping that we have, which is going to allow us to visualize into all of those different materials that we have here in the project. And right away, you guys can actually see we have some different naming conventions. So we have concrete cast in place, we have this other concrete. So coming in through here, we're going to do exactly like Brent spoke to. We're going to condition this model data. So coming in and grabbing this structural foundation right in here, which I actually happen to know is concrete for this project, and also grabbing these other concrete groupings, I'm going to come over into my properties panel, and I'm going to condition this information right down into one common property. And for this example, we'll actually utilize our bid package property here. So once our properties panel loads right up, we'll be able to hop right in and condition this information out. So just coming right in here, I'm going to type in concrete, add that in, and save this data down. So once we save that data down, there's a few different options in order to filter into this information. We could come up here to our change visibility, or we could actually utilize our visibility settings to create some different rules in here. So the rules that we can create will actually allow us to be utilized throughout different model iterations and then also across different projects. So coming in here, I'm saying show only bid package, and I'm going to grab my concrete bid package right here, and I'm going to say update. So now, right away, I'm filtered down to all of my concrete here on the project. So we want to be able to reorganize so we can see this information in a manner that's going to be useful for us. So what I always like to do is actually come in through here, and let's just take a quick look at seeing what some of our property data is that we have available. So jumping right back over into our properties over here on the side. And if we scroll all the way down to our model properties, we can see we have all this awesome dimensional information right away. So we have our area for our floor, which can be useful. We also have our perimeter, which again can be useful, and that family information. So we know this is 12-inch concrete floor, and all the way over into our type information as well with our type name, our structure material, and everything like that. So in order to start utilizing all of this data for a takeoff, we're going to come right back over into our inventory. We come up to our columns tab, and we ask ourselves, what information do we want to see here for a concrete takeoff? So I come in, I can pop out our model name. Count can be useful for, some of the different columns and things that we have. Area, we definitely can keep here for our floors and our walls, and we absolutely want to keep our cubic yardage here for our volume. We can keep perimeter, length, width, and height, and potentially even keep our thickness in here for our floors and things. But let's also grab some of this extra data that we just saw. So we can take in our type name, we can take in our structure material, we might want to see what level this item is actually associated out to, or even what structure material we have. So if we type right in, we'll be able to actually go ahead and grab that specific structure material, and we could even grab our bid package as well. So grabbing all this data, we'll go ahead and say done. And now closing out our properties and our 2D and our 3D and driving into this information, you can see all of that data that we have here. So with all this information, it's best to reorganize it so we can consume this data in a much easier manner for our estimate. So I'm going to reorganize in here by our bid package. So this bid package right away aggregates a total cubic yardage for our concrete here in this project. And now we get our breakdown for our floors, columns, foundations, framing, and our walls here. So very, very easy. All I had to do was a few different clicks, and then we have all of our information right here for our concrete takeoff. So obviously, most importantly is not our speed. Most important is accuracy with the takeoff here. And especially we know that here within Assemble. So what we're going to do to start validating some of this information is actually turn on our color by property. So this will give us some insight into exactly where our cubic yardage quantities are actually coming from. So right away we could see all of our floors here are green. We get 1,097 cubic yards of concrete for our floors. But we can also get a little bit more granular and actually reorganize by our type name. So then as we drill in through here, we get the breakdown for our colors of each type. And then we also have our 2D sheets in here to validate some of this information as well. So if I wanted to come through here and let's just say I want to make sure that I actually grabbed all of our structural foundations in here. What I can do is then come over into our toggle sheets tab, jump over to our selected tab, and take a quick look at our framing plan and do a quick little scan through to make sure we actually have all that information in here. So once this loads up, we'll be able to see all of that data. And as I drive through here, you can see all of those foundations here highlighted so we can make sure that we're actually pulling all the correct information. So after you get
Rachel,
all
I love that right there. As somebody who's comfortable with 2D and really doesn't trust anything until I see it in the plans. This is a huge thing for me, just to visually verify what I'm taking off.
Absolutely. And we definitely see that with a lot of our prospects and customers, especially who are getting much more comfortable with the 3D model. It gives them that ability to fall back on that information that they know and are familiar with, of course. Awesome. So the very last step here for our concrete takeoff is going to actually be saving out this information. So coming right in here, we're going to save all of this data out. And because we are a cloud-based program here, now everybody else on your project team is going to have access to all of this data here. They can validate this information as well. And you guys can also utilize it throughout model iterations and also throughout different projects and treat it like a template to then easily extract and organize all of your concrete information in a new project in this exact same manner here. All right. So with that, that's our quick concrete takeoff. I'm going to jump right back into our PowerPoint now here, and we can start covering how we can go a little bit more in depth with our concrete quantity information. So if I flip over here, this is a quick little video on how we can create different calculations for things like waste factor, concrete formwork, anything like that. So basically, this is what we call our class editor, and we're going to be logging in here and pulling down that specific saved out view that we just created right here, and then starting to create some calculations off of this data. So as we come in, what we're going to do is just select one item, access all of our properties for it, and then begin creating a calculation. So we'll start here with a waste factor. We'll go ahead and grab that waste factor, and now we'll start calculating it. So what we're going to do is just create a quick little 5% waste factor here. So we pull our volume over, multiply it by 0.05, and then we actually can add a filter. So when we add a filter here, we're going to attribute this waste factor to all of our concrete elements here within the project. And for our formwork, we can also do the same thing for a contact area. So coming in here, we're actually going to grab the perimeter and multiply this by our thickness to get a quick little area right here for all of our edges for our contact area. And again, we'll create this filter here, and we can actually attribute this to all of those floors here. And then you'd go through and you'd do more filters for things like your structural columns, your foundations, and everything like that. And then once you hit that calculate all, it's going to push all of that data right back into Assemble. And within Assemble, we'll be able to actually aggregate all of this information together within our inventory. So we can add that right into that concrete takeoff that we had just created in here within Assemble. So everyone gets that full report of their quantities to be used downstream for their estimate. So I come right in and I grab my contact area and my waste factor, and we can just pull those up to the top for a visual sake. And now, once we actually drive into this information, we'll be able to see all of that data here for us. All right. We're now going to take the next step and jump a little bit deeper into beyond Precon.
Thanks, Rachel. And on the class editor, I think it's a great thing to point out. You were creating those rules-based calculations, and most estimators that we work with, they've got a set or a template that they use to run those calcs. The class editor allows you to create and save those files so that you can run those same rule-based calcs on project view after project view, and so that you can get sort of a standardization on how you're running your calculated values.
Absolutely.
So moving beyond the pre-construction and getting into that work-in-place tracking, subcontractors, the former subcontractor, how I progressed my project so I could submit those progress billings was a huge part of what I did on a daily, weekly basis. And then being able to tell that story or verify that with a superintendent and project manager so that I could get my draw was critical to meeting my cash flow. So this is a big piece for subs and GCs alike. And Assemble allows us to not only take the visual information from the field, but actually tie it to the quantity data as we are tracking that from an iPad or a web browser if you're back in the office. So some of the benefits are that visualization, having the picture that's worth 1,000 words, and then connecting those quantities directly into a report that can give you a real-time, accurate, down to the square foot complete.
Great, thanks, Brent. So in here, we're actually going to walk through a few different steps that we need to do to actually set up the information out into the field to actually track that information. So for this example, we're going to track our ductwork here. So what I just did was filtered right down into our ductwork. So now we can actually see all of those different quantities. But obviously, we may want to actually organize this information by our different levels here so we can see the quantities that we're going to need based on each level. And before we actually dive a little bit deeper into the field, we want to start by statusing out this information. So we're going to bucket everything into our not installed status here. And then we're actually going to go through and colorize this data based off of that status. So once we turn on our color by property, right away we're going to be able to visualize everything in red is actually not installed. And then we're also going to be able to have all of our quantities that are not installed as well. But let's say we want to actually have a filtered down data set a little bit deeper for out in the field. Because if you're working on a really high rise, you probably don't need all 50 floors at the same time. So we'll filter down into one level right here. And now we can actually see we're just taking a look at our level 1 ductwork for our tracking. So if we reorganize this data by our status here, we'll then get all of our quantities under that not installed bucket right away. And once we save out this view here, save out this filtered down data set, we'll have access to all of this information right out in the field. So the next step in this process is going to be accessing this data right out in the field. So over on the right side of the screen here, you can actually see our mobile app. So accessing all of this information, we have the ability to append property data right away for one item or a group of items. So we can jump in, actually create a quick multi-select, and append our status for one specific item. So as we jump into our properties here and we scroll down, we'll be able to append that status right there into our installed bucket. And then because we are a cloud-based platform, once you create this status update right out in the field, everyone can jump back in and see all of this data reported out here within Power BI. So in this Power BI dashboard, we're filtering right down to our ductwork on our level 1. And then with just one click of a button here, we can hit refresh and have all of that up-to-date information. So everybody from owners to project executives to PMs to supers can have access to all of this information right over here in Power BI. And right away, you can see we have 14% installed from that ductwork that we just updated out in the field there. And all of these different pages here are interactive and connected to one another. So as you select on that 14% installed, you're going to get all of your quantities. And in that middle graph, in the middle there, basically what you can see is actually dollar values behind those quantities here. So you can see the specific dollar amount installed versus not installed. And we even have the ability over in Power BI to connect all of our quantity information to ERP systems to actually get real earned value tracking information right out here within Power BI.
Fantastic, Rachel. I love that ability just to report and share a fast, easy dashboard with anybody, and consuming information in that dashboard interface is so user-friendly. If I look back on my time in the industry and all the hats that you have to wear as a specialty contractor, or if you're doing self-perform, the tremendous pressure you're under to not only bid and win, but to execute. I spent so much time, and I think we all do, in managing quantities and then going back and explaining those quantities, whether it be internally or externally. This platform is a tremendous advantage to anybody who is driven by telling a story behind those quantities. So that it not only helps you to save a ton of time, but actually communicate with the other folks either on your team or that you're working with.